So it doesn't take a rocket surgeon to figure out stuff's expensive these days. And if you've been around this channel any length of time, you know I am raising a little princess that has decided she likes the finer things in life. So I am tasked with trying to come up with some, we'll call it not average decor that she can use to pretty up meals and place settings as she feels that it's proper to dress for every meal, sometimes changing 3 or 4 times. So I'm going to go ahead and try to knock out a couple little pieces that will hopefully keep her appeased and maybe the pillow off my face at night while I sleep. So I'll see what I got kicking around for some scrap wood and figure out what to do. Let's build it. This one we're going to do out of a piece of scrap I got kicking around. I've used it to test some router bit profiles, setting depths and whatnot, but time for it to do me something a little bit better. And I'm also going to be using this tiny little stencil that I 3D printed. Let's get it squared up. After thinking about it, I got this scrap from an old bench I tore down in the basement of this house, which would have been in the 50s. So it's kind of an oddball piece. It's about 1 3/4 inch by just a hair over 1.5. So I'm going to go ahead and get this squared down to 1.5 by 1.5 inches. Now I'm just going to triple check that it's 1.5 square, and I'm going to pull down from the end the same distance, so 1.5 inches. Run this over to the miter saw, get it chopped off, and figure might as well measure a fourth time. Fourth time's a charm, right? Got those all done up now, and we end up with a 1.5 inch cube. I went ahead and marked center on these. I'm going to go ahead and get these center punched, and we're going to go to the drill press. Going to make these holes with a 1 inch Forstner bit. That should give me roughly about a 1/4 inch all the way around the hole, which should give the piece enough to keep its strength over daily use. All right. After way more sanding than I care to admit, this is what we got. Got all the edges rounded over. Hole pretty close to center. I was actually pretty surprised being such a small project. Now I'm going to wipe these off, probably go over them, sand them a little bit more, and we'll start staining them next. Going to go super basic on this, just using a traditional cherry. And we're just going to glop this on and wipe her down. We'll give that a few minutes to soak in and set a little bit, and we'll wipe it down and finish it off. So I had a nagging feeling about using this little stencil here that I 3D printed. Just couldn't shake it, so I decided to test it out on a piece of scrap. And it looks god-awful. I tried doing a little sponge painting. Turned out like crap. Tried doing with a brush. Not any better. Even tried spraying. And it just wasn't going to happen. So I think I am going to scrap that idea and just leave them as is. Basic, simple. I was looking at some vinyl maybe to put on it, put a little vinyl sticker on it and then seal it up. But to me, that just seemed a little bit tacky. It makes it look overly cheap. Not that these are high dollar items to begin with, but so I think I'm just gonna let these finish drying up and hit them with either some shellac or lacquer. Opted to keep this one as basic as possible since I'm using just a real basic cherry stain. Just going to use a shellac on this to seal them up. For this next one, I got a scratch and dent second offcut, I guess, of walnut. It's not a bad piece of wood, but you can see right there, there's a really big gouge in it. And I have taken the liberty to sand this down, and we got another one. I don't know if the camera will pick that up, but kind of a big dent where it got stuck. But took the liberty, sanded it down already, and I was measuring it out with the dial calipers, and it's not completely the same thickness. So definitely a piece of scrap wood. But for this project, shouldn't matter. I should be able to work around all those things. I did go back to the 3D printer even after the last project, but just printed out a template. So let's get this knocked out. Just going to do a quick trace of this template and try to avoid any defects in the wood by flopping the template however I need to. And then back over to the drill press. Since I still have it chucked up with this 1-inch Forstner bit, that's what I'm going to use to pop these holes in. And it's been a while since I've actually used the scroll saw, so I decided to knock the dust off of it and use a scroll saw to rough these shapes out. And on to the spindle sander. Gonna use the belt head to try to get this all the way down to the pencil lines. And then after I use the belt head, I'll use the smallest spindle I have to fine tune everything and get those tight little corners. And the last machine on this list will be heading over to the router table. Gonna put a nice little round over on the inside of these holes to soften them up a little bit. And here's what we got pretty roughed out. Nice little bevel on that inside hole. So now, gonna do a little bit of hand sanding, which I won't bore you with, and we'll move on to the finish. Decided to go with a lacquer finish on these. I think that will actually bring out the color of the wood real nice. So I'm gonna get these sprayed up, let them dry, flip and repeat, and we'll be back for the big reveal. Finishes are all dry. Let's cut to that reveal. Gonna use last year's Easter plate that I nailed out on my laser using a 10 watt. Works pretty darn good on glass. But here is the first one. This is the one I was going to have a little bronze or gold shamrock on. Didn't pan out. But this, I think, has a certain simple elegance to it. It's not over the top, good enough for everyday use, and even just sit out on the table to decorate in general. Next up will be the scrap walnut pieces. These I like a bit better. I think if I did them again, I would actually knock off those corners. I wasn't sure if it'd make them look too thin and petite if I rounded those corners off. Was going for more of a bulky, blocky look, but I definitely think that knocking the corners off would be the way to go next time around. But all in all, I think pretty solid little projects for just some scratch and dent stuff kicking around the shop, and an easy way to appease a aspiring young princess daughter to keep her busy and keep her dreams of making everything beautiful for meal times possible. So there you have it. You can take just some really basic scrap wood and turn it into an easy everyday, or maybe something a little bit more unique and special for gifting or selling if you're into that game. That's going to do it for this time around. Thanks for watching.